Blessings, love. We honor our divine Aries solar season, Aquarius lunar energy guiding us on this day. So while the moon was in Capricorn over the last 2.5 days, there was a grief flow that came through my being and my body that was so strong. And the square of the sun and Pluto yesterday really allowed for that sacred geometric alignment of intense shadow to come through the human body. And we are multidimensional by nature. And this is what our awakening truly is realizing that we are not just a physical being. Randomly here, the difficulty and the unity consciousness of this grief on this earth at this time is deeply, deeply important, deeply, deeply part of our collective awakening. We have all been brain trained to ignore any sort of discomfort in this life. And when we think about the physical discomfort, our disconnection from our physical bodies completely, where we don't even know our own anatomy. We don't know what our bones are, what our joints are, what our muscles are called, why we feel the way that we do. We can't even name it. We can't even name our emotion, our energies in motion, let alone our physical pain. And let alone the mind, the mental aspect of being a human, where there's this dual aspect of the mind. One part of the brain that is this gentle, silent guide that tells me I'm gonna go here today and put these clothes on. There's a determination of our existence. This is a Ram Dass teaching. It's just so fucking hilarious to always return to. We are completely determined human beings. And when you really look at that concept, it's like, what is this that allows for me to propulse through this life? What continues to have my heart beating and my lungs breathing and my food digesting and this will, that inner motivation, that solar activation, that inner motivation to continue living in spite of it all. And then there's the other part of the brain that is unbelievably on hyperdrive, overdrive, the ego aspect of the brain, which is the bridge between our human beingness and our higher soul self. That bridge, the ego bridge, has become diseased. Where now we are at war with our own selves because we don't know how to tend to the garden of our mind. We have inherited mind programs from human beings that are diseased and not very well. And we are allowed to evolve this story now. I give you permission to evolve your story now. I've given myself permission to evolve my story and look at all of the ways that I was interfering in other people's lives and wanting them to see things in a different way or be a different way or act a different way. When in reality, I was just so uncomfortable and so codependent on every single outer aspect of my human experience because I couldn't look at myself. And so I've spent a lot of time in this life looking at myself, self-examination, and going through initiations and gateways of different kinds of self-examination. Because when we've been harsh and hard on ourselves our entire life, and that dual aspect of the ego brain has told us to do horrible things to ourselves and to other people in this life, it's really hard to examine yourself with compassion. It's hard to offer yourself care and compassion when you've been trying to destroy yourself your entire life. I've been wanting to die for as long as I've been alive on this planet. This is my 36th year of my own incarnation. And the intensity of my awakening began during my Saturn return at the end of my 28th year, into my 29th, into my 30th year. It's just like never had a break at all to really, really step back and really acknowledge the journey. I have had all of these pages that I've created over my awakening journey so that I could acknowledge the journey on those days and those moments. But there's a gift that's being offered to us at this time in the middle of this insane grief. I'm just passing 36th too as I walk on my journey. So there's a alignment of the numerological higher soul self that is speaking through me at this time, that's speaking through us both. we're on time with each other. My awakening journey has been deeply painful, deeply traumatic, full of grief, full of intense pain, and these endless walking through the fires. But realizing is that there is so much that we have to disarm within our being. There is so much that we have to get closer to. This is what the root work is, the shadow work, that inner child work. It's all part of itself. It's the willingness to look closer and to make our human life a ritual of self-healing, self-nurturing, self-compassion from this moment and this day forward. Your inner motivation to self-nurture yourself can change the entire world. And I believe this because I believe in who I am and what my healing journey has looked like. When I first began my awakening journey in 2011, 2012, I was suffering from multiple eating disorders that I had carried through my entire life. I was suffering from alcoholism. I was drinking almost every night. I was having meaningless, random sex with strangers, trying to find a deep connection. And I thought that that was what would bring the connection. And every time that I shared energy, the sacred energy exchange, the sexual connection with a fucking stranger that I met off the internet, it's like a piece of me died every single time. And when we can't express our emotion, and we can't express our pain, and we can't express what feeling rejected and let down by a stranger, what it brings up in us, it can almost make us fucking destroy ourselves. And so that was sort of the catalyst of my awakening as well. It's like, I can't do this anymore. Like, if I want to hurt myself because a stranger doesn't see me and a stranger doesn't like me or doesn't honor me, what is this life even about? I want to know how to nurture myself and nourish myself and understand myself as a human being, body, mind, emotion, spirit, fully, before I destroy myself fully. And I was so close to destroying myself. I didn't know the difference between the different aspects of my mind. I thought that I had a deeply wounded, dysfunctional mind. I could have been diagnosed schizophrenic at one point in my late teens, but I really held an armor around me so that nobody could actually know what was going on inside of me. I thought that I was schizophrenic. I even read books on schizophrenia because I had a part of my mind that was telling me to cut myself, to starve myself, to eat 10 times more food than is normal for a person to consume. Told me that I was worthless, a loser, unlovable, empty. No one will ever love you. No one will ever see you. You're ugly, you're fat, you're disgusting, you're not interesting. All of these things because every single person that I was bringing into my life or spending time with, I didn't feel that we were growing together and that we could see each other in the way that we really needed to see and help each other. Most of my relationships fell apart at the beginning of my awakening, and that's a really deep grief that I continue to work through and work on. Every single grief that we experience in every single one of our relationships is a story and a journey, and really truly requires and deserves our full attention. And so that's why we have spiritual practice. When I realize and I acknowledge that I am spirit embodied, I am a spirit in a human form for a very short amount of time on this planet at this time. But I've been here for billions of years. And I truly believe that there are many of us that are awakening at this time, that are the ancient earth elders, the ancient starseeds that seeded this planet when humanity began hundreds of thousands of years ago. We have devolved so deeply in our consciousness because of the beings that control this world at this time. But this is the pendulum swing. Deep Hermetic philosophy. The principle of universal law states that everything comes back around to the beginning of itself. The Ouroboros medicine, the pendulum will swing back. And we have been riding a deep, intense, dark eons of pain and destruction within the human genome. There is eons of epigenetic imprinting of war and famine and death and mind control and government control and church control. There are so many storylines that are coming through your being right now. You are not just triggered by this one event. This one event that has forced me to close my small business that I opened up last year at this time. I was really on this upswing of my existence after really thinking that my life was going to end. And now that I have to close my door and I don't actually have access to making money in the way that I normally would, I have to look at all of the triggers that come through of how afraid that I feel and how human I feel. And we use the love and light to look at these very painful feelings and these triggers. We don't use love and light to ignore the shadow aspects of our human that comes forward. The shadow aspect meaning the things that I didn't know were there. I have a deep, intense rage. I'm not going to say problem, but I'm going to say I'm exploring rage deeply, and I have been since 2017, and I didn't know that I could feel this intensely, and I didn't know I could allow myself to also feel the deep rage that comes through consistent grief and loss and things being stripped out of your life that completely out of your control. And yet I continue to show up because that's the spiritual path, is to continue to show up in spite of it all. I refuse to give up. I refuse to succumb, even when I feel like it, even when my brain tells me like, why don't you just disappear already? My brain has been telling me to die since I was a little child. So it's okay when you revert to these really intense moments of the mind. Don't give yourself a hard time for feeling like you want to die. I've been feeling like I've wanted to die my entire life, and it's really hard to want to continue living when your basic human life is being threatened. But then continue to look at the ways that you can honor yourself and hold space for yourself and explore yourself. That is what has saved my life on this journey. That is what I have come here to continue to share with people that are open and willing. Eyes to see, ears to hear, a mouth to speak, the will to be. We have come here together at this time to rebirth the new earth from within, to show each other how to nourish and nurture each other. Beyond capitalism, this is sharing knowledge that has been squandered for eons. There's a reason why we don't know how to take care of our bodies. There's a reason why we don't know what our bodies, how they function. There's a reason why we're afraid of birth. There's a reason why we're afraid of death. There's a reason why death phobia has this earth under a grip of intensity. So if we can come closer to all of our fear, and if we create practices that allow for us to explore our fear, our meditation practice, our self-massage practice, our nature practice, our willingness to spend time in the light practice, remember, I'm so good at harming myself. I am so good at betraying myself and abandoning myself and destroying myself and wanting to destroy life within myself. I've done it all. And so I have become a master at self-harm, a master of addiction. And so if I can master that, I can use all of that intense energy, all of that passion, all of that intentionality, and turn towards myself and my heart now and look at all of the ways that I've been harming and hurting myself and give myself permission to learn ways to nourish and nurture myself. And this is the power of Aquarius moon. And this is the power of Saturn and Aquarius connection within and without. The Lord of Karma, speak through me now. The Lord of Karma, awaken within thee now. Nothing will ever be the same again. It's not supposed to go back to be the same. We hit the threshold, we hit the boundary, and now we move beyond all these limitations that were posed upon us thousands and thousands and thousands of years. Your persecution trauma is going to come forward when you try to express yourself. There are going to be people in your family and your friend groups that you will no longer be able to be around simply because you realize this is it. I can no longer do this. Your boundaries are your quest on this life. Your boundaries are your quest. And if you'd like to learn more about who you are by nature, visit my website at www.boundariesarebeautiful.com and visit my YouTube channel. Just search Tessa Ridley Self-Care. Awaken.